That not only would he want to hear dirt on 2020 rivals from foreign governments, but that he might not even contact the FBI about it. Democrats were quick to pounce on those comments, but some Trump supporters say they're being hypocritical. Joining us now, Katie Pavlich, editor at townhall.com and Fox News contributor. Imagine that, some disagreement over the words of the president, Katie.
Yeah, so I think Lindsey Graham has had the best response to this situation. He says, obviously, American elections should be decided by and run by and for American citizens. And the issue is a double standard with how we're applying getting information from foreign adversaries and foreign intelligence services about a political opponent. So, for example, a lot of the time, the story about the DNC operative going to the Ukraine embassy to get information about Paul Manafort during the 2016 election is ignored. As the White House has been arguing, Christopher Steele was a foreign spy working for a foreign government who's not an American citizen, who the Clinton campaign and DNC actually reached out to. They weren't approached by them. They reached out to them and paid them to get information. And I think a lot of this has culminated over the past 10 years with the violations of the FAIR Act, the Foreign Agent Registrations Act, that has not been enforced. And there's been a lot of interaction with foreign governments as a result.
So, Katie, stay with us for a second. Nancy Pelosi is conducting her weekly press conference. She apparently just said that the president, she believes, is involved in a criminal cover-up. Let's dip in and listen here for a minute.
An assault on our democracy, this president says it's a hoax. He takes an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, but I guess it doesn't include him in terms of being to be held accountable to obey the law. So we have a package that we're putting forth in light of the Mueller report, a package of legislation, duty report. If someone comes to you mandating that campaigns report foreign offers of assistance, it shouldn't even, it's so self-evident as a matter of ethics, but we'll have to codify it, mandating a duty to report for campaigns reporting foreign interventions in our elections, protecting our elections with paper ballot. That's our election security bill that Zoe Lofgren is working on, and she is working with the Senate, hoping to have bipartisan support in the House for our legislation to protect our electoral system, closing foreign money loopholes. That's Mr. Sarbanes' bill post the Mueller report. And Mr. Thompson will be having a hearing in the Homeland Security Committee about preventing foreign disinformation. That is just a sample of some of the things that will be out there. I believe we're making good progress on oversight. Our chairmen are doing a great job. I'm so proud of them, winning in the courts and winning documents from the Justice Department with the thought of contempt or following up on subpoenas. And we're going to get the truth for the American people so that they can know what the attack is on our country, what the president refused to do about it, and what he engaged in to cover up what was done. There's so many things happening. I just want to refer to one thing in Hong Kong. As many of you know, or some of you do anyway, the issue of China has been an important one for me since.
So you just heard Nancy Pelosi there reacting to the president's words in this new interview, talking about wanting to hear foreign information about a political opponent. Katie, you were talking about that as she was beginning to speak. You talked about the response from Senator Lindsey Graham to that. Yeah. We pulled that up. Here's the senator responding to the president.
That's not the right answer. If a foreign government comes to you as a public official and offers to help your campaign, giving you anything of value, whether it be money or information on your opponent, the right answer is no. And I've been consistent about that. I think Christopher Wray's statement is the correct statement. And I'm hoping some of my Democratic colleagues will take more seriously the fact that Christopher Steele was a foreign agent paid for by the Democratic Party.
So she's talking about the legal aspect of it, and the right answer is no, not to receive that dirt on your political opponent. But he quickly moved on at the end there, as you could hear, to what Republicans are pointing out, the hypocrisy of the left here, Katie.
Well, sure, you can make the argument that campaigns shouldn't be receiving information from adversarial governments and intelligence operatives overseas, but you also have to make the argument, which Nancy Pelosi didn't, that campaigns should not actively go seeking out information from foreign governments, from foreign spies, and paying for it to use against a political opponent. And that is exactly where we are today. That's what Bill Barr is looking into. Those are the big questions that we have about how the FBI operated. Were they using information through a federal law enforcement agency, the most powerful in the country and in the world, quite frankly, to go after a political opponent with information that was taken from and seeked out by the Clinton campaign from a foreign operative?
We were able to pull up part of the tweet from the president, one of his latest responses on Twitter to the outrage from the left over what he said in that interview there, Katie. He wrote, "I meet and talk to foreign governments every day. I just met with the Queen of England, the Prince of Wales, the Prime Minister of the UK, the PM of Ireland, the President of France, and the President of Poland. We talked about everything. Should I immediately call the FBI about these calls and meetings? How ridiculous." The president took that on. Katie, if you don't mind, stay with us. We're going to go back to Nancy Pelosi and listen for a minute.
And Governor Bush. Tom Downey, a former member of Congress, close friend of Al Gore, was playing George Bush in the debate prep. And somebody threw over the transom or under the door, whatever place it came, the plans for the Bush campaign in the debates. They just got that to Tom Downey. He picked it up and sent it to the FBI. This isn't even foreign governments. That's what you do. There is a sense of decency about fruit from the forbidden tree, ill-gotten gain, about how then Governor Bush would have conducted that debate. This is so, and just by dint of your question, with all due respect, you make it sound as if it could be a common thing. It is not. And what the president said last night shows clearly, once again, over and over again, that he does not know the difference between right and wrong. And that's probably the nicest thing I can say about him. Because if he doesn't know the difference, it could explain some of his ridiculous behavior. And now to invite further involvement of foreign governments into our election. There was an assault on our democracy, an assault on our country by the Russians. That has been clearly documented by the intelligence community. And the President of the United States, instead of coming to the defense of our democracy, has said it's a hoax. This is beyond, it's really, there is no sense of what's the word I wanted to find? Any ethical sense that informs his comments and his thinking. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I want to make sure we understand what you're saying, because you're going to be pushing for legislation here. Are you saying, is it clear now whether this is illegal, whether it's wrong? Is it illegal to take this kind of information? And in addition, one of your members at least is saying that this is impeachable, this attitude by the president. Do you believe that this becomes impeachable?
There is in the law that you cannot accept contributions, and that includes in kind, from a foreign, your campaign cannot, from a foreign government. That is in the law. But if it needs more clarity, then we will go the duty to report. That's not that only you don't accept it, but you report it to the FBI, because this is, it's an invasion of our democracy. So I don't have the language right here, but there is language in the law that prohibits any contribution. And again, contribution is in-kind information or whatever that is. But we want to make sure that it has more clarity and carries a responsibility to report.
Patty. Madam Speaker, if you discovered, we're already in campaign season. If you discovered that this president in the course of the 2020 campaign accepted help from a foreign government, as he suggested that he might, Would you consider that grounds to launch impeachment proceedings?
It has nothing to do with any campaign. I want you to all to understand that. As we go down this path to seek the truth for the American people and to hold the president accountable, it has nothing to do with politics or any campaigns. It has everything to do, if I may, answer your question, it has everything to do with patriotism, not partisanship. So as we collect all the facts, and it takes time because you have to do your research, make your request. If you go to court, you have to do the accommodation. You know what that is? It takes time to prove that you have tried to resolve the issue, and that takes time, and that's the path that we will be on. And it encompasses any and all of the comments that the president has made.
Just to clarify, though, why?
It's all women in the front here. I'm so excited about that.
I'm here. Why, if the president is inviting foreign interference, why is that not grounds to move towards impeachment? And what concrete steps can you take to try and prevent him from doing it?
Excuse me one sec. I didn't know I needed water, but I guess I do. Everybody in the country should be totally appalled by what the president said last night. Should be totally appalled. But he has a habit of making appalling statements. This one borders on so totally unethical that he doesn't even realize it. However, what we want to do is have a methodical approach to the path that we are on, and this will be included in that. But not any one issue is going to trigger, oh, now we'll go do this, because it's about investigating, it's about litigating, it's about getting the truth to hold everyone accountable, and no one is above the law. But I want to get back to our legislation, because that is what the American people elected us to do. They elected us for the people agenda, to increase paychecks, lower health care costs, have cleaner government. Many of these pieces of legislation are in that. What is it about Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in Congress that they do not want to respond to what is so popular across the board in our country? What is it, to take it back to your question, what is it about the Republicans in Congress? How much more can they bear of the president's unethical behavior that they think that they are honoring their oath of office? And I believe these are all connected. I think it's all about money. Connect the dots in all of this. It's all about money. And look at what the president is doing in terms of Saudi Arabia and the sale of perhaps nuclear technology as well as planes to Saudi Arabia. Follow the money. Who benefits from that? To declare a national emergency that he can bypass Congress in terms of those sales, bypass the law in terms of transferring of any nuclear technology to a country. Follow the money. Yes, Chan.
On this issue of a COLA increase, is there, number one, a problem with the idea that people come here and because the pay isn't satisfactory, they can go off Capitol Hill and go to K Street, and that entails corruption? And why is it so hard, naturally, to then take a vote on this because it's so toxic for a regular pay raise or a COLA increase? And is that appropriate at this time when people, themselves back home in the Midwest or out West need more money?
Well, it's hard at any time. It's not a pay raise, it's a COLA increase. And whether that comes to be, I don't know. It would have to be a bipartisan initiative if it were to be the case. And as you know, Mr. Hoyer feels very strongly in support of strengthening this institution, that there should be a recognition of with a COLA of the work that is done. Let me just say, listening to the members, because it's never a good time to bring up something like this, there is a sentiment in the country that Congress should not be just members, people who can afford to go to Congress. It should be about everybody having the opportunity. Many more women, many more people of color, and the rest. And that is where some of the unease comes from, that people say, well, it shouldn't be just for wealthy people. Well, it isn't just for wealthy people, but there is that impression. And there is an impression among members that it's hard to have two homes, raise a family, and all the rest. So that's part of what the discussion is. I don't see it as any... What did you say? You related to going to K Street? No, I think what I think is an issue in our country is the revolving door, largely spinning madly in the executive branch as we see it now. Look at the people in the department, the secretaries in the cabinet. They're all connected to the special interest. So many of them have left already in disgrace, dismay, or disappointment. But you see their connection, whether it's EPA, and Interior, you name the list. There's so much connection to the, when I say private sector, I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but to special interest. I'll paint that in there. So this whole issue of this revolving doors is a separate issue and something that has to be looked into. But as we have inclusion, and that is an important value.
The House was into 401 this morning,
Yeah.
and most people back home say, oh, Congress doesn't get any work done, nothing happens. I know you're talking about the graveyard here, but that said, the public doesn't think that Congress gets things done, and the House was into 4 o'clock in the morning. The defense markup was quite late last night as well.
No, till 7 o'clock this morning.
But what's that? But that's my point. Why does the public perceive this differently, and that's why they're opposed to a COLA increase, and members are afraid if they vote for that, they're going to get...
I don't think that this is... Look, we have a president who is ignoring the law, not honoring his oath of office, not honoring the office that he holds. We have a funding challenge that we have, which is something that must be done. By the end of the fiscal year, we must pass the appropriations bills. I'm an appropriator, left to our own devices, I believe, as I've said to you before, that the appropriators in a bipartisan way can reach solutions. We're still having the cap fight, the lifting of the debt ceiling. We have the president transferring nuclear technology as well as other weaponry to a country that is getting away with murder, and he chooses to ignore it, is engaged in a deadly war in Yemen, which the Congress opposes. So we have important policy matters to deal with. I think I've spent enough time on speculating as to whether there'll be something or not. Yes, ma'am.
On the appropriations, at the end of the month, the Office of Refugees and Resettlement says that they are going to run out of money to house unaccompanied migrants at the border. The Senate is going to mark up a bill next week on this issue. How do you think that the Senate and the House can bridge the divide, given the fact that they had to drop this off of the disaster aid bill just a couple of weeks ago because they couldn't find agreement?
They're working on it. There are two paths. One is in the appropriations bill where we have the Homeland Security piece, which is part of the 2020 appropriations, and then the supplemental. We'll have to have a supplemental because of the needs are so great. But I have confidence that they will come to a conclusion on it. We have to. The humanitarian needs are very great there, and we care very much about that, and we don't want them to poison pill what we're trying to do to alleviate that humanitarian challenge. I mean, really, taking children out of the arms of their mothers, separating families. How could it be, as people of faith that believe in the spark of divinity in every person, that we're all God's children, that we could treat people the way they do? But we will have to come to an agreement to get the bill passed and signed by the president.
Could it be done by the end of the month?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we're on that path. Yes, ma'am.
enact legislation, you're going to have to work with this president. I don't see infrastructure on your board. Going back to the infrastructure meeting a few weeks ago, looking back, was it a good idea in that moment, right before you walked in, to accuse the president of a criminal cover-up before you were trying to get a deal done for the American public?
These are bills that have passed the House.
I know.
These are bills that have passed the House. We are not giving up on infrastructure. And I say almost every day that the president is involved in a criminal cover-up. He just chose to pick it up that day. So there was nothing new about anything I said about the president at that time. I think the president just didn't want to pay for it. The purpose of that meeting was, we're going to do infrastructure, build the infrastructure of our country, which I truly believe he wants to do. Build the infrastructure of our country in a green way, I'm not sure about that, to raise the paychecks of the American worker. And to do so in a way, infrastructure is a national security issue, as President Eisenhower so beautifully demonstrated in the 50s when he instituted the interstate highway system as a national security issue to unify America. So I don't take any responsibility for the president's behavior, except to say that we're going to hold him accountable for it.
Budget caps question?
Yes, sir, please.
I understand the White House is floating some offer to Democrats. They were going to review it. Have you seen that? Have you given any comment on how?
I don't know what that is. What are you referencing?
Apparently, Mnuchin was in with McConnell making offers last night and wanting to run something by you. So
I don't know what it is, so I can't tell you if I do, but I'll tell you where I see things. We do have to lift the budget caps, and we have to avoid sequestration, because that's not a good idea for our country. Have to avoid shutdown of government, which is palatable to some Republicans who don't believe in governance, but we will not go down that path. And we're going to combine. When we lift the caps, then we can talk about lifting the debt ceiling. But that would have to come second or simultaneous, but not before lifting the caps. I don't know what their proposal is, but I do know that we've been engaged in conversation, Mitch and Leader McConnell and Leader Schumer and Mr. McCarthy and I, with the Secretary of the Treasury. We were making some progress, but then they kind of backed away from it. So we'll see. I don't know what that one is. I'm not usually, shall we say, when Mick Mulvaney takes the lead. Mick Mulvaney was one of the leaders in shutting down government when he was here and voted to keep it closed. And that was when we were operating on the Republican number, that we said, we'll agree to it. We don't like it, we'll agree to it. And they didn't agree to their own number. So I'm hopeful, always open. But I think left to our own devices, we can get that. I keep using that phrase because there is bipartisanship in all of this. We know what we have to do. We can get it done. It's when they come in with deal breakers because they don't believe in governance. They don't believe in science, which says evidence, data, truth, fact of what we need to do for our country. So if you don't accept that and you don't believe in governance, then you have a different approach to all this. Okay, are you ready for game time tonight? See my yellow jacket? Golden State Warriors. Game time.
Your bet with Justin Trudeau.
I did. Made a bet with Justin Trudeau after it was 3-1. Now, I didn't want to bring it up in Normandy. That wouldn't have been appropriate. It wasn't the time or the place. But the next day, we made our bet. Can't wait to see what those goodies are from Canada.
Poutine?
Say what?
Poutine?
Is that what they'll have? I think that it will be. See, my advantage, apart from the Golden State Warriors,
all right, well, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House there, appearing to try to end things on a light note after starting out that weekly press conference by accusing the president of being involved in a, quote, criminal cover-up. She also said the American people should be appalled by his words, wanting to hear dirt on 2020 rivals from foreign governments. Katie Pavlich, you've been standing by listening to all of this with us. She says the president has now invited foreign involvement in our elections. She was pressed in that room then why not proceed with impeachment if that's all
the big
true?
question for Nancy Pelosi, and her challenges going forward are still trying to placate her leftist base, Jerry Nadler in charge of the Judiciary Committee, by staving off impeachment because for political purposes it isn't good, while also trying to manage 2020 candidates who are planning on running against President Trump calling for impeachment. She's accusing the president of a criminal cover-up. At the end of that press conference, you heard her say, we will hold the president accountable. Well, what exactly does that mean? And if she's wanting to actually, follow up with the claims that she's making, and if she believes in what she's saying, it seems like she's going to have to take more action than making the same statement about how impeachment has to be done on facts, not based on politics.
We're going to hear a whole lot more about all of this. Katie Pavlich, thank you for staying with us through all of that. Eric?
All right, thank you, Senator and Katie. Congressman Chuck Fleischmann joins us. He's a ranking member of the House Appropriations Homeland Security Committee, Republican of Tennessee. Congressman, the Speaker just accused the president of a criminal cover-up, as you heard, saying that he's engaged in an assault on our democracy. Do you think it is appropriate for the president or any presidential candidate to accept any information from a foreign adversary or a foreign country?
Well, let me start by saying this, Eric. It's very sad when the Speaker of the House continues these ridiculous attacks against the President. The President of the United States is doing an outstanding job. The American people know it. Unfortunately, we're coming up on an election year, and Democrats have devolved, and we can see this all the way up to the Speaker, to a situation where they're constantly attacking a man who's doing an outstanding job for our country.
But what about what he said in the Oval Office specifically about willing to accept it? He did say, though, if he thought it was wrong, he would call the FBI. Is that appropriate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have laws governing our elections. As an appropriator, we have put funds there to make sure that other countries will not in the future interfere with our elections. This president follows the law. He has done nothing wrong. And again, this is Democrats just trying to swing from the left side at the wind with literally a very sad rhetoric. When I heard the Speaker say that, I was stunned. I was saddened. President Trump is a president of the law, by the law, and of the people.
Well, it's not just the Speaker. Lindsey Graham also called it a mistake this morning. Let me read you the federal law about donations. It says, quote, it shall be unlawful for a foreign national directly or indirectly to make a contribution or donation of money or other thing of value, or to make or express an implied promise to make a contribution or donation in connection to a federal, state, or local election. So it seems a thing of value, could be information that's against the law. And here you have the president in the Oval Office saying, well, maybe I would do it. I mean, although it is hypothetical, and he is saying, answering a hypothetical question, not saying that he would exactly do it.
The president has made it clear he has in the past complied with the law, as do members of Congress. We are all governed by federal election laws. They need to be upheld. He will uphold them. He has done that in the future. I think this is just an act of despair, literally, by not only the Speaker, but Democrats who will not allow the American people to see the great job that not only this administration done, but what Republicans in Congress like myself have done. We're trying every day to make America stronger, keeping our borders secured. These are just fictitious attempts by the left to reach out in a very desperate way. The American people know loud and clear that America is in a far better place today than they were in the previous administration. It's sad that we hear that rhetoric. Right now, we have a problem in this country. We have a lot of crises.
Yep.
We need to sit down and work on them together.
Congressman, I'm sorry, we're up against the hard break. The computer will cut me off. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
President Trump, meanwhile, dismissing polls that show him losing to several 2020 Democratic candidates, including Joe Biden. Former DNC interim chair Donna Brazile is here to weigh in just ahead.
Star Barbara Corcoran. Keep in mind, this death happened in April. It was reported initially as a heart attack. There's been no evidence, to be fair, presented that it's anything other than a heart attack. But as you can understand, because of this story, any family who's lost someone in the Dominican Republic in the past 12 months is beginning to raise questions about what might have happened here. Eric and Sandra, back to you.
Steve Harrigan, thank you.
And we have some breaking news out of the Middle East this morning. We're getting some brand new reaction from both the White House and the U.S. Navy after several warships assisted a pair of oil tankers, the latest that were attacked right near the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Lucas Tomlinson is live at the Pentagon with the latest developments. Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Eric. The attacks come amidst increasing tensions between the U.S. and Iran. Today, Japan's prime minister is in Tehran to try to calm down the escalating rhetoric. Both tankers were carrying Japanese petroleum products when they were attacked. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton are here at the Pentagon this morning for a pre-scheduled meeting with the acting defense secretary and chairman of the Joint Chiefs in the secured planning room known as the tank. The two oil tankers were damaged outside the all-important Strait of Hormuz in the Gulf of Oman. Both underway outside in the strait, near the strait, when the explosion occurred. One was left ablaze and 44 sailors had to be rescued at sea. The tankers had just left ports in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and they were en route to Asia. The distress calls came 8 minutes apart, according to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. Quote, "We are aware of the reported attack on shipping vessels in the Gulf of Oman. U.S. naval forces in the region received 2 separate distress calls at 6:12 a.m. local Bahrain time and a second one at 7 a.m. U.S. Navy ships in the area are rendering assistance. Officials say USS Bainbridge, a guided missile destroyer, part of the Lincoln Strike Group, is in the vicinity and rescued 21 of those sailors. The USS Abraham Lincoln, the aircraft carrier, visit to Oman and had just gotten underway today when the incident occurred. The head of American forces in the region, General Frank McKenzie, was recently in the Middle East, warning of an unspecified imminent threat from Iran and its proxies. Iranian state media claims to have rescued sailors from at least one of the ships, and some of those sailors were taken to a port in Iran. And this comes just a month after 4 different oil tankers were attacked by mines, which the Pentagon blamed on Iran. Eric.
All right, Lucas, in a few moments, I'll be talking to General Jack Keane about Iran's suspected hand in all this. Thank you.
Meanwhile, President Trump saying he would be willing to listen if a foreign government offered him dirt on a political opponent. In a new interview, the president telling ABC News there is nothing wrong with listening, and he would not necessarily contact the FBI. Democrats seizing on those comments to ramp up calls for impeachment.
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
Do you want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong.
Jason Chaffetz is a former Utah congressman and a Fox News contributor. Mr. Chaffetz, good morning to you. So willing to listen. How did that sit with you when you heard the president say that in this new interview?
Well, you need to listen to what he said first. He said he would do both. He would inform the FBI and he would listen. If he thought it was wrong, he would escalate it to the FBI. This fake outrage from the left and the media is just, it's part of a pattern here. You remember, it was Hillary Clinton's husband, the former president, President Clinton, who I think it was 11 times took more than $500,000 for a speech, 11 times, while Secretary Clinton was the acting Secretary of State and presumably a candidate for the presidency of the United States. There was no outrage on that. They were taking $500,000 out of Russia, for instance, and other countries. Come on, they are faking the idea that they're exasperated by the president's answer. Of course he can listen.
Got it. Obviously, Republicans are seizing on the criticism from the left this morning to point out that hypocrisy. But when the president specifically said, and I'll read his words directly, if I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong. How did that sit with you?
I think the president, first he said he would do both, then he said that. I think that's just fine. Remember, that is markedly different than what Hillary Clinton did by proactively spending millions of dollars overseas to engage somebody, a foreign national, to dig up dirt on her opponent. The president isn't suggesting that he would proactively do that, but if somebody approached him, every single campaign I know of would listen to that material first. They absolutely would.
Well, I'll tell you who did take take issue with that, and that is presidential candidates Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. Biden tweeting this out, saying, quote, President Trump's once again welcoming foreign interference in our elections. This isn't about politics. This is a threat to our national security. An American president should not seek their aid and abet those who seek to undermine democracy. Warren tweeted, the Mueller report made it clear a foreign government attacked our 2016 elections to support Trump. Trump welcomed that help, and Trump obstructed the investigation. Now he said he'd do it all over again. It's time to impeach Donald. Clearly, you can see, Jason, that the left is using this as an opportunity to further call for impeachment of this president.
For the president to say he would listen, they're going to impeach him. You know what? I'm tired of the impeachment talk. If they're going to impeach him, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and look at that Mueller report because it exonerates the president. And if they keep talking about that, then we'll keep reminding the American people that Mueller found nothing on the president.
All right, I got to ask you about this breaking news, which just came into us here. It seems to be coming as a surprise to those involved. The House Intelligence Committee has just subpoenaed Rick Gates and Michael Flynn. And of course, Rick Gates, the Trump campaign deputy campaign manager, and the former White House National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn. They want documents and testimony, Jason. So this is just coming out, and Fox News has already been able to get reaction from Rick Gates. He says he did not know about this subpoena and is now getting in touch with his lawyers.
Well, Adam Schiff is involved in a propaganda campaign. He wants this pattern, this drip, if you will, that the Trump administration and its cohorts are non-responsive. What Adam Schiff is asking for in this subpoena is something they don't have, which are the documents. The documents are no longer in their possession. For instance, with Mr. Flynn, he doesn't have these materials anymore. So they're with the administration. So again, it's a pattern of the Democrats asking, seeking, and subpoenaing documents that these people just don't have.
You know, when you mentioned Adam Schiff, the chairman of that committee, wrote in this announcement or this statement where they reveal that they have been subpoenaed, he said that they did fully cooperate with the Mueller probe, but so far have refused to cooperate fully with Congress. So we'll see where that goes. This is the president's latest tweet on all of this. Unrelated to Russia, writes the president. He says House committee now plays this seldom used contempt card on our great AG and Secretary of Commerce, this time on the census, going back to all the news happening yesterday. Dems play a much tougher game than the Republicans did when they had the House majority. Republicans will remember. And of course, they voted yesterday, the Oversight Committee, to hold AG Barr and Wilbur Ross in contempt, all surrounding this census question. Final thoughts on all of that. Tough to keep track of it all coming out of these committees, Jason.
I remember because I was the chairman. You had Brian Pagliano, who was engaged and entangled as the IT specialist for Hillary Clinton. He had an immunity agreement, and yet we issued subpoenas for his presence to come before the committee, and he didn't even show up. And he had an immunity agreement. So for the Democrats, the duplicity now to take on this new role is just terrible.
We'll have a lot more on the show coming up on all of this. Jason Chafe, it's great to see you, and thank you. We will have more reaction from the White House in the next hour. Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley will be our headliner. He'll join us live at 10:30 a.m. Eastern.
It is a very busy morning. We have more breaking news after a massive protest turns violent in Memphis. The mayor there saying 24 police officers were injured as protesters threw rocks, destroyed cars, and even spit at them. We'll tell you what prompted all of this. A live report is just ahead. Plus this.
I think they really have to make a deal. A lot of companies are leaving China, as you know.
Do you have a deadline for imposing the 325?
No, I have no deadline. My deadline is what's up here. We'll figure out the deadline.
President Trump weighing in on the trade war with China and saying he will take his arguments directly to President Xi later this month. Florida Senator Rick Scott is here with a warning on the entire situation.
And have you heard what presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders has said about a socialism pitch? Why he thinks Americans would be, quote, delighted, he claims, to pay higher taxes for. We'll tell you what and bring you all the latest straight ahead here on America's Newsroom.